Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Stewart Kraintz. And as always, this is your inside track to success. Got another great guest for you guys this week. And before I go ahead and introduce her, as always, I am asking you to like, subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section below. I want to know what you're gaining from these episodes. What are the aha moments, the nuggets that you are taking away? More than anything, y'all, so I get an idea of who else I should have on the show so that you keep receiving value each and every week. But that's enough of me. I want to make sure we introduce today's guest. So this is somebody who I've had the privilege of knowing for about a year now, I think
hmm
I don't know. We met certainly. And she's somebody that has continued to blow me away with her passion, the level of impact that she shows up with in the world. She is somebody that is a stand for pursuing your dreams, creating the life of your dreams, and both entrepreneurially and in designing like the family home life that I think so many of us are looking for. Without further ado, I want to welcome Whitney Yarberry on the show. How are you, Whitney?
Thank you. Oh my gosh, well, I'm like honored with that intro. But no, I'm doing good. I'm so glad to be here and to share my story.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it. And so I know we had your husband John on the show a couple months back, and he is known as the Cincinnati Picker on
Mhm.
YouTube. And you have your own YouTube channel called Be the Village, which I have enjoyed. I've caught several of the videos myself in the last couple weeks, and just wanted to get a sense of what led you to start that channel and what the vision is for people who listen and watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So Be the Village really started at the same time as John and I were going through our journey of becoming foster parents. And this was back in, I think it really started in 2017, 2018. It was something that was always on our hearts that we saw ourselves as being foster parents. And for those of you who don't know, foster care is where children are removed from their home due to abuse, neglect, and ideally giving the family time to reunify and bring their kids back into the home. And we would just be that soft landing place. Um, we never had interest in really adopting. We always wanted to be just that temporary stop for these kids and families. And we also envisioned this happening when we were empty nesters. Like I always had this like thought in my head that John and I will have our family, we'll have our kids, and down the road we'll do this. We'll be foster parents. And I've shared this story on my channel before. It's a little kind of cheeky, but we were watching a show and the show had a subplot about foster care. And
Mhm.
it just warmed my heart. It called to me and we started to ask the question, like, why not now? Like, what
Mm.
is stopping us from supporting children and families now? Like we had just, built our new home. We had space. We had one child at the time who was about, I want to say 2 to 3 years old. Um, and we were just like, why not now? So we started the process of becoming foster parents, and um, the training to become foster parents is very limited and it's a little dry. And so I did what a lot of people do, and I went to YouTube and I was trying to see what a foster family actually looked like. What was the day to day? What was the emotion? What are the challenges? What are the beautiful parts? And I that's where I got most of kind of the context of what we were getting into. It
Mhm.
better prepared me. And also it's predominantly or at least what I was finding on YouTube is there's a lot of faith-based foster families who are sharing their story, and which is great. I mean, we do need more foster families. There were just certain messages I didn't necessarily fully relate to in
Mhm.
some of the foster related situations. And so I saw an opportunity to share our journey from a secular perspective, and in hopes that others would hear our story, would relate to us, and possibly go on that path as well. So really that was the beginning of Be the Village, and it has gone, oh my gosh, it's been a roller coaster. I mean, it was a grind for a while. Nobody was watching. This stuff doesn't always happen overnight. And there was one teen placement, because we take in teens primarily. There was one teen placement that at the time she was a part of the channel, and we would conceal her identity. We would blur her face. We didn't give any details about her or her family. And I saw the viewers just fall in love with her, because they finally saw a child without the stigma of like foster teens are bad. And like, that was really the turning point for the channel. Like, that was when it kind of blew up and people were paying attention and seeing how our journey and what we share has inspired so much. It's been incredibly rewarding. So,
yeah, no, I can tell. And actually, just seeing you light up talking about it, I can tell that that's a very true, very real thing for you. And, I'm just curious in terms of not only creating this lifestyle around being foster parents, having your own children as well. What are maybe some of the like unforeseen beautiful moments or nuggets that has been created in your home by choosing to open it up to children in need?
Yeah, I gotta say, there are a lot of cliches. And I think one of them is that, I went in because I thought I could make a difference in somebody else's life. And I didn't realize how much it would change me. The amount of growth I've experienced just being in situations where you are up against it at times. You're dealing with complex trauma. You're dealing with a lot of different people. And yeah, it can get messy, but like, to your point, there are so many beautiful moments. And while I can't necessarily like think of specific ones, what strikes me is, like, for example, when we have a child in our home, most often the primary family, the family who that child has been removed from, like, we're not their best friends. Like, we are usually not their best friends because like we're the enemy. We're viewed as the enemy. And one of the most rewarding things that I've experienced as a foster parent is walking that journey with that parent, even knowing that like they don't like us. We could be giving their child every ounce of love and support that we can. And a primary parent isn't always going to see that right away, because they're dealing with so much of their own. But my point being is, when you're walking with them and you get to the end of a case and that relationship has evolved, and like the time that you've put in and like the patience that you've put in with the family and with the child, like, our family has grown so much. Like, I just had actually 2 previous teens are texting me today. One of them is asking, can they visit? Another is asking, hey, can you help me like get into college? Like, real life stuff.
Wow.
That it validates that we've done right by them, and like that they have felt safe and supported, that they would come back. Yeah. So a lot of huge heart moments when you're fostering, for sure, along with the challenges.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And I think that, the past teens who have been placed with you coming back, seeking counsel in other ways, is indicative of the impact that you've had on their lives. And so I'm curious, have you had any ways reflected back to you and John in which the impact has been far greater than even what you've intended?
So immediately I think about like kids who have actually returned to us. And, without giving away too much of any child or family's story, going back to that validation, like it was very validating to know that they felt that support, they felt that safety, that they would actually come back to John and I and want that, ask for that, use their voice and speak to it. It's validating, but also I see on a day-to-day basis where so many of our mishaps and the parts where we've tripped up, because this isn't a perfect journey. I mean, like, we are not perfect people. And I say that on the platform, like on Be the Village, people are very quick to praise and acknowledge. But at the same time, I think what has made such a bigger impact is our ability to show that you can be normal people. Like, you can be normal people. You may not have the answers to every situation. You may not respond or react in the most perfect way every time. It makes, what I've seen is that the people watching notice that and they start to realize that they can make that difference too. Instead of like putting certain people on a pedestal, it's like we're sharing the raw and vulnerable side, and we're showing authentically what the journey is looking like. As far as like family vlog videos, ours are not glamorous or sparkly and perfect. Like, we show kind of that real side. And I think seeing that, I wasn't expecting that to have such an impact. And the amount of people who have said, I've followed you for years and I'm in school to be a caseworker, or, I'm now talking to my partner about this being our journey as foster caregivers. Also, when we're sharing open and honestly about the feelings that come up in this, because those are things that aren't always talked about. I've seen the bigger impact of people starting to see, and especially with primary families, especially with teens in foster care, they start to be more empathetic and inclusive of what the experience is like for them. So I think that's been a pretty big impact that I didn't anticipate, is like how big the reach has been. When I was starting it off, and it was like, okay, this is like this little thing. I didn't expect that it would have this reach. I mean, the YouTube right now is like, I'm about to cross over 100,000, which is like a really big like YouTube moment. I'm going to join John and get my little like YouTube plaque. And, I'm excited for that, but it's never been about the numbers. It's always been about the community that has been created. And it's been beautiful.
I love that. And, maybe something that's more broadly applicable to folks, you're talking about documenting a very personal journey for you and John, but also one that, has a lot of twists and turns and different avenues the plot can take, so to speak, when you're, having such a human element involved. And so maybe it isn't foster parenting, but maybe it is entrepreneurialism. Maybe it is, some other pursuit. What do you feel like the value is in people sharing their journey, being vulnerable and opening themselves up in that way for others to see?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. So I would say one of the things I've seen in myself is that by putting the journey out there and by being in service and kind of connected with the community, I'm finding that I'm learning so much more. Not only do I see myself kind of like in a mirror, like I'm getting a lot of feedback. Like feedback discernment has been something I, am always in a practice about, because when you put your life out there, it is something, everybody has an opinion. Everyone does. And so really taking in the feedback that applies, making adjustments, checking in with yourself. Like, I remember there was this one time, I have very strong opinions. I'm very, I don't want to say like bold, but like, I'm not afraid to say what I'm thinking or feeling or any of that. And there have been times where, being in this practice of sharing and having a platform with a lot of eyes on it, I've been given feedback where I've had to pause And I've chosen to pause and really reflect on, like, is there a better way to inspire and influence? Like, was I coming from a place of passion and inspiration, or was I coming from anger and resentment? And so I think that's a beautiful gift. When you're doing any kind of work like that, you're putting yourself out there, is being open and being humble and just checking in with yourself. So I don't know for sure if that like answers your question, but that I feel like that's been a pretty big benefit I've seen in putting stuff out there.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. And hearing you talk about influence, people can argue that you and John, your husband, are both influential and influencers in your own
Yeah.
ways on YouTube, which is awesome. You don't see
Yeah.
that every day in a couple. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, in your mind, what does influence mean to you, and how does somebody actually achieve that in a
Mm.
tangible way?
Yeah, good question. So what does it mean
Yeah,
for me?
what do you think it means to you, and how do people actually achieve that? Because we talk about, I'm an influencer because I have
Mhm.
X number of followers on Instagram, or I have so many subs, but like, what does that actually mean, and what does that actually do in the world?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, this is deep because it is a title that, or and a label that I really shy away from.
Mhm.
It still doesn't feel super real to me. There are different tiers of influence. Um, and I would say, like, I remember seeing, I think it was probably a TikTok or something, where we all have a level of influence. We all are influencing those who we are working with, those in our community. It's just to what degree. And
Mhm.
so I think when you're looking at, you know, as you become more successful, as your reach expands, I think the term like influencer is that there's a added layer of responsibility in your message and being really clear and being, I mean, you're always going to be honest. We would like to assume that, but it's just this added level of care that what you're saying and what you're doing matches. Like
Mhm.
it's about integrity, I guess is the word I would use for that. So that's what I would say. Like that's the pressure of being an influencer, so to speak, in my mind. And I will say, and people say John and I are like the power couple, and like, we've got all this. And something I wish that people would know is that like it really isn't like even the influencers, things aren't always perfect, like we live messy lives just like everybody. We're navigating, tough situations and tough conversations. And um yeah, so I would say, just going back to your question, being an influencer, I feel like with our platforms and as someone is growing their reach, they're going to have that extra level of like integrity and responsibility to that. And then the second part of your question was, how do people achieve
Yeah, how do
that
people
level?
achieve actual influence versus being an influencer, so to
Right, like just the
speak?
number. Yeah, I think that comes down to being authentic. You can have people out there who have the numbers, um, but really like just staying true to you and like who you are and not trying to conform. Like that's when your audience, whatever it is going to start to just be attracted to the relatability. So I would say just staying true to you and your message. I think that would be my key, and consistency, like just really being consistent.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. And I feel like for anybody listening to this, again, Whitney's path has involved foster care. That might not be your path, that's fine. But suppose you want to write a book or start a nonprofit or start the business or whatever your goal may be, being true to yourself, being connected to your why and why you are
Mhm.
doing what you are doing each and every day is going to connect you to your goals, get you out of bed, make you do the work on the days you don't want to, but also if you are in a place where you want people to be bought into your vision as well, you get to be really clear and connected on what your vision is and not waver from that despite all the distractions. And I feel like in what we're talking about here, so many YouTubers have the pressure to monetize their videos, like take
Mhm.
sponsorships or whatever the other options out there may be that maybe they dilute what they're offering. And so I want to acknowledge you for staying true to what, your show is about.
Mhm. Yeah, let me mention that because this is something like John and I, we have different communities, like our platforms represent different groups of people. And we've talked about like sponsorships and getting monetized and all of that. And I remember my very first sponsorship that I took, I was terrified that people would think that I was selling out. When really, like for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I've reached a level that someone is going to pay me to talk about a product. And again, it goes back to that responsibility of, you know, I have a responsibility to not just take any sponsorship. Like I have to believe in it. I have to believe that it's going to benefit my audience. And I remember after that sponsorship, my viewers celebrated me. Like they celebrated with me that I had like reached that level when I was waiting for them to like shun me and be like, you're going after the money. On the other side, John is in a very different community where like sponsorships they're not celebrated. It does come
Mhm.
from a place of like selling. And so just like know your market, like if this is a path for you, and that you're trying to go down that. And I'll also say, I don't know if you know this, but I left my full-time job about 2 months ago, and
Mhm.
I have been pursuing my own consulting business. And I'll say, like, I know it doesn't have to do with Be the Village, but like every choice and every journey kind of guides us. Like, this is what I believe. Everything prepared me for this moment to like really trust myself, trust my vision, the impact I wanted to create. And like, it didn't feel super safe at the time. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving my job. Like I'm leaving health insurance. I'm doing all of that. But at my core, I knew what I was capable of. So just like a little sidebar on that
Mhm.
because it was a scary moment, but I think all of my steps up until like this point like had prepared me for it. So
I love that. And so I think a lot of people listening to this have something that they probably want to do, want to take that leap into whatever the thing is that they would like to be doing full time. And I acknowledge you for going in on your business. How do you create that trust, whether it's in yourself or just that things are going to work out and make that plunge?
oh, yeah. So this has been a big journey for me with that. I mean, like trusting myself. There was something that I learned recently, and I would love for anyone who this lands with, like, steal it and adopt it. But what I found was that regardless of the situation, regardless of what is either happening to me, if I feel like, things are just being thrown, like life is lifing, is what I like to say. It's like when life is lifing and
Hmm.
you just feel like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get past this? Like, I found that I always land on my feet. And that truth, like after reflecting of like, if I look at my life and I look at all the hard moments, I feel like a lot of people can do this. It's like you look back and you think of the really tough moments. On the other side of that, you always land on your feet. And so that is honestly like, I mean, it seems kind of anecdotal, but I've consistently been telling myself that, like it's a reminder that, okay, what if I do take this leap and it doesn't work out? I'll still land on my feet. I still have options. And that has given me, I think, like the strength and the confidence to really go after it. And I would say personally, I've been shocked at coming from a place of like, okay, like let's just try it. Let's just see what happens. I have felt this level of expansion that I, again, did not anticipate. So like within the last 2 months, like I'm already identifying like subcontractors because I have too many clients and projects and I need to like hire people to help keep the work going. And like the expansion is incredible.
That's an
And
awesome problem to have, by the way.
I know. Yeah, I know. Exactly. It's like, did I expect that? Did I anticipate it? Like, no, but just like, okay, you always land on your feet. Like, I think everybody can reflect back and think of those times. And that started to rewrite the story that I can trust myself, that I can trust myself, whether I have the innate ability or knowledge, I have support systems that will also support me in landing on my feet.
Yeah. No, beautifully said. And I think that what a lot of people get stuck in is our brains are super well designed to show us exactly what we could stand to lose. And it's at the expense of everything that we could possibly gain. Because, yes, you could run out of money, but what if you don't? Right.
Right.
Or, yeah, nobody might hire you in the first month, but what if they all hire you on month 2? Right.
Yep.
So things like that. And you kind of said it already, but you wouldn't be in this situation now where you're having better problems of, hey, I have too much work for me to do right now. I get to hire people out. Like that's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful blessing. And congratulations on that.
Thanks. I also just want to share, like going back to kind of like enjoying the journey and tying it back to Be the Village. Like I was working in a corporate space and I was working in a corporate space when we were going through our like trying to get licensed to be a foster parent and sharing the story on YouTube. And from there, like my passion in this area just started to grow to the point where I left my corporate job and I'm an instructional designer. So I build courses, I build trainings and like instructional videos and stuff. And I was like, I love what I do, but I want it to serve the area that I'm really passionate about. So I moved into like nonprofit work. And from that nonprofit work, like I didn't know it at the time, but it was as if every step along the way, when I look back now, it gave me the skills, it gave me the connections, the experience to put me into this position. And so I guess what I'm trying to say and share is that you don't have to get it right off the bat. Like it has taken me, gosh, what is it? Like 3 to 5 years of like going down this path of like recognizing what I'm really passionate about, what are my skill sets, where do I want to be? Like it all led me here. I feel like I don't have like a thing to like tie that in a bow, but it's really evident to me now. It's really evident to me now that like I did have to go on that journey. I had to go through the uncomfortable moments at a corporate job where I felt like I was just pushing papers and like I had to work for a nonprofit that, you know, I had to like fight to influence them. You know, all of that prepared me for here.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. And, I think what you just shared is super valuable because a lot of us might already be on our hero's journey, so to speak, without realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you already stated yours, but just a super quick version of mine. Like, I am a life coach. People hire me to support them with their problems, supporting them in reaching the goals that they want to reach or whatever the thing is. And I had no idea this career path was lining up in front of me all the way back in my corporate sales days when I was beyond miserable doing what I was doing. But what I did, each and every day was coach people on finding not the product they wanted, but the one that would actually solve their problem in some very high ticket areas. And, I'm curious that for the folks listening, it's like if you are maybe in a job you don't currently like, how is it setting up for you in the future? What's possible? And like, what are the skills you're actually gaining for the effort of being here? And I think to your point, Whitney, we're unfortunately set up in a way that we can only figure this all out retroactively, like looking
Mm-hmm.
back. But I'm sure, like, no matter how low some of your lows were, you wouldn't change any of it. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. Like and oh gosh, this kind of goes back to parenting a little bit. And I heard someone say that if you were going to you know, raise a child and you want them to be strong, are you going to give them an easy path? Like, no, you're going to give them a path that is going to have them practice that strength. And they went through all of these different examples of it. And that's, I think, true. Like when you're in it, it's hard to see, like, how is this making me strong? Like, I don't want to admit that I'm going to be stronger after that or after this. But when you retroactively look back, it's like, yep, that's exactly what I needed at that time. And I'm the person I am today because of it. And I wouldn't
Yeah.
change it.
No, neither would I. Not even the lowest lows that I've been through as part of my journey. And folks, that's why on this show, I always harp on self acknowledgement. Like it's not just a cheesy thing that I tell you to do, but truly we build self confidence by keeping our promises to ourselves. So, but only if we acknowledge ourselves for what we've done. And it's not just so you can feel good and have that, like, yeah, moment. It's so you build that credibility with yourself over time so that you can do things like leave your job and start the business and
Mm-hmm.
do so more confidently than you could have if you weren't. And so that's why I'm such a stickler for self acknowledgement. And anybody that works with me is going to get asked over and over again, how have you acknowledged yourself today? To the point that
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they get mad at me for asking them so often. Whitney, I know we've had you on today for feels like the blink of an eye, but we're already getting close to time. I would love to hear more directly you talk about the work you're doing now and how people can get in contact with you.
Oh yeah. So the work I'm doing now, so if someone is interested in our family's journey in foster care and interested in possibly having that be your journey as well, jump on all the socials, be the village on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. So since we spent time on that, just want to share that. And then yeah, so I have started my business and learning consulting. It's called Amplify Your Advocacy, and really specializing, and this gets to like vision and being really specific about, who are the people you want to surround yourself with, work for, what voices do you want to lift up? And for me, I find that it is the, heart-centered smaller organizations and nonprofits that I want to support in, lifting up their message and making sure it's heard to a broad audience. So it really creates impact. So yeah, amplifyouradvocacy.com, and specializing in marketing communications, instructional design. So anybody who needs courses built, I love doing that. And yeah, that's what I'm up to right now.
Awesome. Well, and we appreciate you for being on the show today, Whitney. And folks, for those of you listening, like I know you got some nuggets from today's episode. So please let us know what your aha moments were in the comments below. I'm sure Whitney will want to know as well. You can connect with her there also. And, again, share this out with a friend. Like we can only grow this show as much as you guys are willing to share it because the cost of admission is otherwise free, y'all. So do us a solid. But Whitney, before you go, I want to know, what are you acknowledging yourself for today?
I'm acknowledging myself for not being stuck in the perfectionism and trying to get everything right, which would have slowed down all the growth that I'm experiencing, and really just being in the flow and celebrating and just going with it.
I love that. I love that. And that's an important reminder for all of us as well. Some action is better than perfectionism and never getting started.
Oh my gosh, yes. Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
Thank you for being here, Whitney.